Good morning, everybody. I would like to give you a very warm welcome on behalf of the European Policy Centre and our partner for today, the Foreign Economic Relations Board of Turkey, otherwise known as DEİK. We're here today to talk about Turkish foreign policy in an uncertain times. I'm very delighted that we're joined here today by İbrahimKalın, who is the presidential spokesman and chief advisor to the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan. Welcome to you, Mr. Kalin. Before we actually proceed, I'm going to hand the floor for a couple of minutes to my colleague from DEİK, who is a board member and also the president and CEO of the KALIN group, Mrs. Zeynep Bodur Okyay.
Thank you, Amanda. Honorable spokesman, dear members of DEİK and EPC, distinguished participants, on behalf of Foreign Economic Relations Board of Turkey, I would like to extend my gratitude to representatives of EPC to co-organize only online 60-minute policy briefing, and I would like to thank you all for attending. It's an honor for us to have the opportunity to discuss Turkish foreign policy in these challenging times with Honorable Spokesman and Chief Advisor to the President of Turkey, Mr. İbrahimKalın. Mr. Spokesman, thank you very much for making the time to join us today. I know that you are quite busy. At DEİK, we represent about 60% of Turkey's leading businesses, many of which have extensive ties with the European Union. In line with DEİK's business diplomacy, we carry out activities for the advancement of Turkey-EU relations from a business perspective mainly. Turkey's deep-rooted partnership with the EU has always been the anchor for our business relations. Both parties have invested a lot in constructing a long-term partnership despite different challenges they faced in the past. We believe that Turkey and the EU, as two main trade and strategic partners, will find a common ground as they did before, and Turkey will continue to be an integral part of Europe. Therefore, it's important that we have to talk more to each other and a little bit less about each other. So we hope that today's briefing will be a major contribution to this end, and as the dialogue and mutual understanding remain crucial in these uncertain times. So now, without further ado, I don't like to waste your time and Mr. Kalın's time, so I would like to give the floor to Ms. Paul. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zeynep Hanım. I would just like to start, first of all, by asking the audience if they have a question, which I hope they will, to already either type in the question in the box on the screen, or alternatively, if you would like to verbally ask a question, to click on the hand that's next to your name on the list. We actually only have 45 minutes because Ambassador Kalın has to leave at 1:45 for a meeting with the President. So without further ado, I'm going to start by asking Ambassador Kalın a couple of questions. Ambassador Kalın, I would like to start by asking you about Turkey's policy towards Libya. Turkey has been playing a key role in turning the war in Libya in favor of the National Accord government. Turkey has also been playing an active role in terms of diplomacy to try and help bring about a ceasefire. We've seen in the last few days there was the trilateral summit between Turkey, Libya, and Malta. There was also, I believe, yesterday or the day before, the visit of the deputy Russian foreign minister to Ankara for discussions again over Libya. So diplomacy is going on, but at the same time, Turkey has come under significant criticism, let's say, from certain actors regarding its approach towards Libya. Turkey has been accused of violating the Berlin Conference agreement, and French President Monsieur Macron has also said Turkey is playing a very dangerous game in the region and with Libya. And we've also seen in the last couple of days the President of Egypt talk about also perhaps putting troops into Libya, the government in Cairo passed legislation to allow the deployment of troops into Libya. So I'd like to start off by asking you, could you tell us now or clarify what are Turkey's policies and objectives now in Libya? So I give you the floor, Ambassador Kalin.
Thank you. Thanks for your wonderful introductions, and I want to thank European Policy Center and DEİK for organizing this and inviting me. So to start with Libya, as you have pointed out, we have an active diplomacy going on. We just reached an agreement with the Russians yesterday to form a study group to work on a credible and sustainable ceasefire. I underline this words credible and sustainable because many attempts have been made in the past over the last 2 years or so to reach different forms of ceasefires and to advance the political process, but they have all failed. And if you look at the facts in the wider context of the Libyan conflict, they've been violated by the Haftar side. Haftar side has violated every single agreement since the Abu Dhabi agreement of 2019. And Haftar side has been the aggressive side. And we went to Libya at the invitation of the National Accord government to help them to push back this aggressive behavior. So, you know, we believe that Haftar's backers, which include United Arab Emirates, Egypt, France, and to a certain extent, perhaps Russia, through Wagner and others, are not really helping the peace process there. We supported the UN process. Our president attended the Berlin conference. The Russians hosted also a meeting, if you remember, in Moscow last year before the Berlin conference. Haftar did not participate in any of them. He came to Berlin, but you know he didn't commit himself to any kind of lasting, sustainable ceasefire there. So I think we have to get our facts right here, like who's being the aggressive side, you know, who's being on the defensive side. The Libyans had signed an agreement back in 2015. It's called the Libyan Political Agreement, the Sakharat Agreement, and that was the main framework to advance the political process, hold elections, and keep Libya united. It was again the Haftar side that violated that agreement, and most recently, Haftar said about 2 months ago he doesn't recognize the Libyan political agreement, the Sakharat Agreement of 2015 anymore. He wants to be the sole ruler or the sole dictator of Libya. Of course, the Libyans, the vast majority of them, will never accept this. And the political reality is that everybody has to go back to their 2015 position if there's going to be a credible, sustainable ceasefire, because there is no trust on the part of the government of national accord vis-a-vis Haftar, because they see all these moves, calls for ceasefire, etc., as another tactical move to gain time, to buy time, to prepare for another attack. On a larger scale, of course, we fully support the political process. We want to advance the political process. We do not want to have any military escalation or confrontation between any groups or countries there. President Macron has been very aggressive with his approach in Libya. I guess he's trying to assert some sort of a leadership in North Africa, the kind of leadership that I believe he doesn't have in Europe at the moment. He doesn't have the kind of weight that he wanted to hope or wanted to have, you know, in Europe for a number of domestic political reasons, other regional issues, France's long history of colonialism in Africa, and all of that. And he's accusing Turkey of being the aggressive side. In fact, even he went so far as to call Turkey's action there a criminal action. And this is really unbelievable, you know, for the president of a country like France to say that to another NATO member. We believe that this kind of action undermines security in North Africa. France's support for Haftar also jeopardizes NATO's southern security, because there are a number of complicated issues there into which I don't want to go at the moment. But we would like to see the political process move forward. The sooner we reach a political agreement, the better it is, because nobody wants to see Libya turn into another Syria conflict, where the conflict is no longer about Syria. It's a conflict in Syria where you have so many stakeholders. The conflict has become not only regional but also global, and has become a theater for you know, flexing muscles and power projection at a time of global uncertainties. And it doesn't really help anybody. We have seen the terrible consequences of the Syrian conflict. We have seen the ongoing chaos in Iraq. The consequences have been devastating for the Iraqi people, for the Syrian people. We do not want to see a repeat of that in Libya.
Thank you very much for answering this first question. I would like to stay in the region and now turn specifically to the recent developments in the Eastern Mediterranean and the renewed flare-up of tensions between Greece and Turkey following Turkey's recent announcement that it was planning to drill in the waters near to a Greek island. We have witnessed a response, a very robust response from the Greek authorities, including them underlining the fact that they're preparing their military for pushback if necessary. I mean, I understand that there's been some high-level, discussions between Turkey and Greece to try and, let's say, reduce the tensions to find a solution to the ongoing tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean more generally, because we know this is something that's been going on for a long time. So far, I believe there hasn't been any answer found. I know as well that Greece has called for the EU to place tough sanctions on Turkey. So how do you view the current situation in the Eastern Mediterranean? I mean, what's Turkey's goal here, and how do you see a way out of the current problem in the region?
Well, Greece is our neighbor. It's an important neighbor. We share a lot of history and culture. There are Greek Orthodox minority community in Turkey. We have a larger Turkish Muslim community in Greece. We share a border. We are allies in NATO, and we share a lot. The Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean, unfortunately, have remained unresolved issues because of maritime limits and continental shelf issues. That's primarily because of the islands and their status in the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean. The Greek side has taken rather a maximalist position, claiming that the island of Askelerosio, for example, we call the Meis Island, which is only 2 kilometers away from the Turkish shore, but only about 580 kilometers away from the Greek mainland. They claim that Meis Island should have a 40,000 square kilometer continental shell area. That is almost like half of Turkey's Antalya Gulf. And that's simply, that cannot be accepted. Obviously, this is against logic. This is against geography. This is against international agreements. So we do not agree with this maximalist Greek position. In regards to the recent NAVTEX that our energy ministry has announced, in fact, this license was given to our energy company in 2014 or 2012, but it was, I think, made public first in 2014. And the area that this ship, Oruç Reis ship, will be exploring, not drilling, but exploring, is about 180 kilometers away from the Meis Island, Askelerosio. So we saw the Greek reaction. We believe it's really overreaction. I mean, they reacted in a way as if like their calling was for some kind of a military confrontation. We do not want any kind of military tension or even political tension in the Eastern Mediterranean. There are 2 components to this. One is Turkey and Greece agree to continental shelf and maritime borders through negotiated settlement. Our president has said on a number of occasions that we are ready to start exploratory talks with Greece, talks that will include all of these issues, maritime limits, exclusive economic zone, the islands, rock formations, geographical formations that are not listed as islands on which nobody lives, but Greek claims for itself. We reject that. So it's an intricate geography. We believe that they should all be part of the talks. You know, I've been involved, probably you followed, you know, in this traffic, and our president has taken a very constructive approach to advance this process. Chancellor Merkel has taken a lead. Our president spoke to Prime Minister Mitsotakis on June 26 to further this positive agenda. But the Greek side, again, sticks to this very maximalist position. No country in the world will ever accept this kind of maximalist position. If there was something like this, say, between Greece and Italy, or between Greece and Albania, I mean, no other country will ever accept this, that, you know, a small island only 2 kilometers away from your shore, but only 580 kilometers away from the mainland should dominate your whole continental shelf. I mean, no country will accept that. Therefore, we are in favor of negotiations, and we do not want any tensions there. The second component is about Cyprus, because there are disputed areas around Cyprus also. And the Greek Cypriots do unfortunately the same thing, meaning that, like the Greece, they use EU membership as a bargaining chip, or as a source of pressure against Turkey. They go back to Europe and say, well, you know, European Union has to take action, you know, implement sanctions on Turkey. They talk to the United States and others. This language of sanctions, etc., will not work. We will never accept language of threats or sanctions. We are only there to protect our rights. We would like to see equitable and fair sharing of all the natural resources in the Eastern Mediterranean. For the last 3 or 4 years, Turkey has been excluded from all the major energy attempts in the Eastern Mediterranean, so-called EastMed, led by Greece, the Greek Cypriots, Israel, Egypt, has completely excluded Turkey. And every expert, you ask any expert, energy expert in the world, that any plan, any energy pipeline map, anything of the kind, without Turkey will not be feasible. Everybody admits this, but for political reasons, for ideological reasons, coming from Israel, Egypt, because of our political differences, they have excluded Turkey. And now they want Turkey just to sit there and be imprisoned in the Antalya Gulf. I don't want to bother you with all the technical details, but experts will know when you look at the map how it is drawn. The so-called Sevilla map, which was put together by some academics in the 1970s, is not valid at all. It doesn't define any binding borders or maritime shelves, continental shelf or borders for any country. But somehow, some people think that, well, that's the right of the Greek side, that's the right of the Greek Cypriot side. We don't accept that. So in sum, what we would like to do now, and this has been our call, and we've been involved in this negotiations, is to turn a new page, start the negotiations to address all of these issues, confidence building measures, political consultations, maritime continental shelf, maritime limits, economic zone, etc. We believe they can be resolved through negotiations. But if any country, whether Greece or Greek Cypriots or some EU members, try to pressure Turkey, use language of threats, believe me, it will not lead to anywhere.
You just mentioned about the sanctions that have been called for from Greece towards Turkey. I mean, clearly this incident is making an already difficult relationship with the European Union even more difficult. It seems to me that Turkey's relations with the EU has become, very dysfunctional over the last few years. I mean, obviously, the frozen accession process, which has been dead for a long time, is a key part of this. But I mean, there's been a lot of other grievances over the last few years, which have added to the tensions. And I would say, the relationship is more or less now devoid of any sort of trust. I mean, in the foreign ministers meeting last week, again, You know, we saw Mr. Borrell on the one hand call for a way to re-engage with Turkey, to have a dialogue, but on the other hand, you know, they've been asked again to look for ways to, I don't like to use the words punish, but to respond to Turkey's actions in the Eastern Mediterranean. I mean, how do you see now the relationship between Turkey and the EU? Do you think, I mean, how do you think it's possible to rebuild the relationship to something that's more, you know, it's not just about sort of contractual or issue by issue basis, some way of coming back to the relationship that Turkey had in the past?
Our president has spent more time and more political capital than any political leader in recent memory to start the EU membership process for Turkey, and he succeeded in that, if you remember, in 2004. And then the official negotiations began in 2005. I think it's important to remember what happened then and what unfolded since then to this day. We worked really hard. Our president spent, again, so much time and political capital in 2003 and 2004 to resolve the issue on Cyprus. And the Annan plan, which was put on the table by the UN, was rejected by the Greek side, not Turkish side. The Turkish Cypriots supported the Annan plan overwhelmingly in favor of it, and the Greek side rejected it. And that was a big disappointment for the UN, for EU countries, for the United States, and all the other key players. Then what happened? Remember, right after the Annan plan, the Greek Cypriot side was accepted into EU as a full member. And EU actually violated one of its fundamental principles, that you don't accept a country as a member if that country has a territorial dispute with another country. They violated this principle in daylight. And ever since then, the Greek Cypriot side has used its membership privilege to pressure Turkey, to, you know, create all kinds of problems, anti-Turkey atmosphere, and all of that. I don't want to repeat that history, but I think it's important to remember. Now, we began the official negotiations in 2005. 36 chapters were presented for Turkey to fulfill membership. Only one chapter was open and closed. 15 years, only one chapter. A number of chapters were open. Some were blocked by the Greek Cypriots. Some were blocked by the Commission. Some were blocked by France. Some were lifted, etc. But you see, if you're talking about who is really willing or not willing to make this happen, I think the EU has to look at the mirror and see why they keep pushing Turkey away. And then they come back and complain when Turkey's legitimate security concerns are not addressed, taken into account, whether it's the fight against the PKK, whether it's the fight against Daesh, whether it's the fight against FETÖ terrorists, which carry out the July 15 coup attempt in 2016, or energy concerns or other issues. Then they come back and, you know, blame Turkey for developing, or as they call it, cozying up to Russia or looking for other alternatives, etc. But who's pushing Turkey in this direction? I think the main problem in Europe is a lack of visionary leadership. If you look at the map, we are bound together geographically, historically, culturally, more so than any other country. Our president has repeated his commitment to EU membership on so many occasions. But one thing after another leads to this vicious cycle of mistrust, as you have pointed out. Even before the July 15 coup attempt, the PKK has been allowed to run free in most European countries, capitals. This is recorded in the official reports of those countries. They collect money, they recruit members, they send terrorists to Turkey, they run all kinds of propaganda against it. Can you imagine Turkey hosting, you know, thousands of people who are intent on destroying, say, German democracy, or France's political establishment, or Spain's regional government, or something? How will EU react to that? How will any country react to that? We, not only the PKK, but now in recent years, after the July 15 coup attempt, the FETA terrorists are fleeing to Europe. They are using the system to their advantage against us and poisoning relations between Turkey and a number of European countries. They do this in the United States as well. When the refugee crisis began as a result of the Syrian war, Chancellor Merkel took, I think, a bold initiative and almost single-handedly led the process to reach an agreement. So we reached an agreement, March 18, 2015, migration deal, EU-Turkey migration deal. Who kept the promise and who broke the promises? I mean, let's be honest. If you're talking about, this is never a one-sided story. I'm giving you these different examples to just remind us all that Turkey's willingness, desire, and strategic commitment to join the European Union has hit a dead wall on the European side. They say, well, you know, we have the enlargement fatigue, you know, Turkey is doing this, doing that. You know, they always come up with an excuse to prolong this process. In the Eastern Mediterranean, these are disputed areas. Why should EU take a side? Legally, EU is not even in a position to take a side on this. Just because one member pressures other members doesn't give the EU as a body a license or authority or mandate to dictate the view of that particular member. I mean, this is just against logic. This is not, you know, in the EU laws. This is not according to international law. These are disputed areas, right, in the Eastern Mediterranean. And we've been saying that let's sit, talk, and try to resolve this issue through negotiations. The response we are getting is that Turkey should be penalized. Turkey should be sanctioned. For a number of other political reasons, you know, different member countries have this anti-Turkey animus, and they keep bringing this up, and it undermines any trust, obviously, that exists. Now, this is the situation, but I want to be positive. I want to be hopeful. I think we can overcome these problems, as Zeynep Hanım said, by talking to each other rather than by talking about each other. That requires strong leadership. That requires visionary leadership. If Europe wants to be relevant in regional and global affairs, if Europe wants to be a force for stability, for global order, for regional peace, has no choice but to work with Turkey, which stands at the crossroads of different continents and regions, etc. As far as we are concerned, you know, we see ourselves as part of larger Europe. Our economies are intertwined. We still conduct about almost half, 45% or so of our foreign trade with the Eurozone economies. We would like to increase our trade volume with European countries. We want to work against common threats such as terrorism of all kinds, Daesh, PKK, any other terrorist network. We want to fight against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which have been on the rise in Europe. We want to work together to resolve the refugee issue, and I believe we have a lot to do there. Turkey has been carrying the larger burden here. I think that's a fact. Everybody admits that. But it's not enough to simply tap Turkey on the shoulder and say, yeah, you're doing a good job, keep doing it. And then the other side does nothing. You know, we are hosting almost 4 million refugees for the last 5-6 years. What kind of help, how much help has been given to Turkey? We are keeping these people here in Turkey on purely humanitarian grounds. But burden sharing is a reality of our age. And if you don't share burden, whether it's vis-a-vis the refugees or other issues, then it becomes one-sided, and it's not fair. And then on top of all this, they put all the blame on Turkey. And I'm like, who has called NATO having a brain death, because sometimes they accuse us of undermining NATO alliance. And I will be very blunt here. Over the last year and a half, the debate about NATO's strength and relevance in the 21st century, in this age of uncertainty, as you pointed out, has been questioned not by us, but by two prominent members of the alliance. United States, President Trump has said over and over again that NATO is it needs to reform itself. NATO member countries need to spend more on defense. America will not shoulder their expenses anymore, and so on and so forth, and accused a number of countries by naming them. I don't want to name them here. And that created an interesting debate about NATO. On top of that, President Macron came out and said NATO is brain dead. So who's questioning NATO's relevance and strength as NATO allies? Because NATO and the EU are intertwined in some contexts. When in fact, we are providing security and safety for the southern flank of NATO. We participate in all the major NATO missions. Our defense spending is at the optimum levels. We contribute to all major NATO programs and activities. And on top of that, still Turkey is being accused of this and that. So my point is that, instead of this blame game and using language of threat and sanctions and so on and so forth, which will never fly here, which will have no impact on Turkish sovereignty or determination to pursue its own national interest. But we believe in cooperation. We believe we are stronger when we act together. We believe all of us are secure when everyone in the neighborhood is secure. And we try to realize this goal in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, in a number of other places. I believe we have a lot of room to work together, but first we have to put aside some old ideological political prejudices, focus on a common positive agenda, and produce a strong, wider, deeper strategic leadership, a vision that will turn our entire region into a region of peace, prosperity, and safety for all.
Thank you very much. To a certain degree, I would agree with you that the EU's had a sort of double standard approach towards Turkey when it comes to the EU accession process. At the same time, the EU remains very concerned about human rights and freedom of speech in Turkey. For example, the case of Osman Kavala, which remains a very important issue for the EU. But I would like to actually take a couple of the questions that we have here now, because I'm aware we only have 10 minutes left with you. So I will read a couple of the ones out that we have typed in. The first question is from Nuruddin Fride, who is asking, is a war between Egypt and Turkey in Libya possible? Both sides have contact to a third party. The second question is from Laura Pitel, who's asking, Turkey has invested a lot in building a good relationship with President Trump. What happens to Turkey-US relations if he loses in November? So we'll start with those questions, if that's okay.
Yes, we do not want to see any military confrontation or even political tension with any country, including Egypt, Russia, France, or any other country. The recent announcement by the Egyptian government and the parliament giving the government the mandate or the license to send Egyptian troops into Libya is very counterproductive. I believe it will be a dangerous military adventure for Egypt to send troops there. It doesn't help advance the political process, again, I think it shows who is really in favor of political settlement and who is really in favor of military confrontation. Haftar has failed, And I think his backers just need to understand and realize the fact that he's a failure. They cannot work with him. They cannot force their way into the Libyan political scene by sending more troops or by sending him more weapons and aircrafts, by building up a major military presence in Jufra, controlling Sirte, blocking oil, causing Libya billions of dollars, and creating some kind of a de facto division between east and west of Libya, between Benghazi and Tripoli. These are dangerous moves. These are dangerous ideas. As I've said recently, we've seen similar attempts in Iraq and Syria, and the consequences have been devastating. We should draw lessons from those examples and avoid any kind of either division of Libya de facto, if not de jure, and avoid any kind of military confrontation there. In regards to the second question, of course, the leadership relations are important. I mean, leaders talking to leaders, leaders developing good chemistry with each other, is important in state relations, international relations. Our president has a good relationship with President Trump. Of course, it's up to the American people to decide who is going to be the next U.S. president. But whoever is the next U.S. president, we will continue to work, as two states, as two candidates. I mean, President Trump has developed a good relationship with our president, but our president knows former Vice President Joe Biden from the Obama period. We worked with him. Joe Biden actually came to Turkey a number of times, met with our president a number of times. I met him a number of times. So, I mean, we can only hope for, a fair run at the election, and whoever wins, we will be ready to work with them.
We have another question here. We have a green hand from Osman Çelik. I think my colleague can unmute him. Mr. Çelik, are you there?
Mr. Selic, you are self-muted. You have to activate your microphone to ask a question.
Okay. I think he's having... Mr. Çelik, are you there? Okay. I think he's disappeared from his microphone. So we have a couple of minutes left. So if I may, I will ask you one closing question. Turkey has sort of traditionally been quite a soft power player in terms of its foreign policy, but we've seen, in recent times, more use of hard power to sort of achieve objectives. Is this something that is going to be increasingly the case in terms of Turkish foreign policy? I mean, we see this with some other countries, around the world. They use hard power more frequently. For example, our friends from Moscow. So is this a real change in the dynamic of Turkish foreign policy?
Well, you use hard power when it is necessary to protect your interests, prevent war, to protect civilians, refugees. When you have, a criminal regime like the Syrian regime in Syria, killing, its own people with barrel bombs and chemical weapons, etc., you don't just sit tight and say, well, we are a soft power country. Sorry, we cannot do anything for you. You just have to protect them. This is not our choice. This is not our preference, but you just have to do it. When a terrorist organization like the PKK or like Daesh attack you, of course, I mean, you have to use hard power. It doesn't contradict your soft power abilities. You combine the two, and we have, as you pointed out, I think deepen our soft power capabilities in Africa, in parts of Southeast Asia, in the Balkans and other places. Even during COVID-19 crisis, at the peak time, we were able to send medical supplies to tens of countries around the world, including some NATO members like Spain and Italy, United States, but also to Chad, to Somalia, to the Palestine, to many other countries around the world that are not that rich or or wealthy. And so we have the soft power ability also, but we would like to combine the two and reach the status of a smart power. You use hard power when it is necessary as a defensive force. You use soft power to reach out, and you combine the two. You use smart power not for your own selfish interest, but to create an environment of win-win situation for all players and actors, so that if you want your house to be safe, you want your neighborhood to be safe, and if you want your neighborhood to be safe, you want your city to be safe, and so on. This is that's why whether it's in the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, we are open to any constructive ideas. Whether it's in regards to the EU membership, if we would like to continue that process, we would like to finish the negotiations on the customs union, updating the customs union. We would like to get the Schengen visa resolved so that Turkish citizens can travel to Europe like many other country citizens. We would like to see an updating of the Turkey-EU migration deal so that we can deal with the migration issue in a fair way, and we prevent terrorism from becoming a menace to the entire region. We would like to work together to fight against Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, and other types of ideological discrimination movements, and so on and so forth. I think in all of these areas, I believe we can work together. There are lots of very smart, intelligible, visionary people in Europe, those who understand the realities of the 21st century, those who appreciate the significance of partnership and the role that Turkey does play, is playing, and will play in the future. And if you bring these visions closer to one another and talk to one another more often, keep the lines of communications open, and work on concrete projects, I believe it will be in EU's interest or Europe's interest, and it will be in Turkey's interest. And when you combine these forces, I think it will be good for the entire world.
Okay, I have one last question here. We have 1 minute to go, so I will read it very quickly. It's from Carolina Druten, who's asking, Turkey has been blocking the defense plan for Eastern Europe, namely the Baltic states and Poland. Ankara wanted certain Kurdish groups to be recognized as terrorist organizations, but in late June, Turkey stopped blocking the defense plan. Could you give some background on how the conflict was resolved in NATO?
Yeah, well, it was resolved. If you remember, it was an issue at the NATO summit, and it is resolved now. So it's in the past. We look forward now.
Yeah, we all have to look forward. This is the approach.
Yes,
I would
exactly.
like to thank you very much, Ambassador Cullen, for joining us here today to addressing these topics. I mean, Turkish foreign policy, I think it's going to continue to be in the headlines for the future. Turkey is a topic of great interest always. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope you'll have another opportunity in the future to have you in the European Policy Centre, and I wish you a very nice day.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your invitation, and thanks to the listeners for their patience. Thank you.